Hey, this is David for Big Pits. I'm going to start this stream. We're going to be doing several things here. Uh, Probably going to get started by showing you all the new trade alert responder updates that I've added in. I'm going to be publishing that live on the stream. Hopefully everything goes smoothly and we'll have a new version. But I've added a lot of stuff into it over the last week since the first pre-release. And now we are going to do the second pre-release. Hopefully this is kind of like a weekly build type thing for development and testing. I had a lot of good ideas come up throughout the week. I have a lot of core functionality added over the last week. So there's a lot of good things going on, and I just can't wait to show you. And that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start my debugger, and I'll let you see what it looks like before we publish it. I don't think the splash screen was on there last time either. So you get the splash screen with the logo kind of spinning. And here we go. Here is the new look to the application. It's very different than what it was before, but you'll notice there's actually quite a bit going on here. We have the title and version up the top. We have the link to the website. Just a moment. Okay, sorry about the interruption. I've already talked about the name and the title, and we also have the link to the website, but we also have all the other tabs that were there before, but you'll notice the main difference is on our TradingView tab, is what it was called originally. I now have some new stuff going on here. You notice there's a drop down, and there's also a add and subtract button. Now, what is going on down here? This is the scanner, and I have made these kind of modular, so there's a bunch of unique things about it now. And if you're interested in the code, of course it's all open source, but what I'm going to be doing right now is I'm actually going to be showing you kind of just how it works. So there are some default settings for these scanners. Once I develop more scanning methods, we're going to add those into this drop down. And then you select the one that you want, you'll hit add, and you'll notice it added another scanner here. So that's actually really cool. I'm pretty happy about how that works, and there's a few settings regarding the scanner that you're working with, and one of which is the name. So the name will show up here. There's also an associated starting URL, which is the home button. When you click the home button, it's going to take you to the starting URL. So I just clicked on NASDAQ, and this particular scanner has a starting URL of TradingView.com. It'll take us back to TradingView. Now the little search button here, that just starts the scan. Now, right now, the scanner is not going to pick up anything because it needs the alert log to be present. I'm not even currently logged in, so you're not going to see that right now. And then you click on it again, and it'll actually stop scanning. But it's scanning for all the information we've done before, and I've added some new things as well. But another really cool thing is whatever tab we have selected for our scanner, we hit minus, it just takes it away. And we can go down to 0. So that's pretty cool as well. And this all was actually quite a bit of work to get going, to make this kind of modular so that I can develop something that is also another type of scanner, but for some other location or something different on TradingView to create alerts. Then we load it in to the scanning tabs here. It'll have its own tab. It'll have its own search button, its own home button. If it applies, it'll show its name, and based on whatever you have in there, it'll scan. I even have an option to where we can enable custom HTML. Instead of loading a web page, you could load up custom HTML, and this is probably most likely for scans that probably wouldn't be scanning anything on the web. So the example you're looking at here is essentially just a web scraping tool. We're going through on the website on TradingView and looking at the alert log and scraping the information we need out of there. But what we are going to do with some of these, like if we were going to do a Slack scan or a Twitter scan, we don't necessarily have to go to the Twitter website and refresh. We can use their API in the back end using some NuGet packages with C#, and we can actually pull that information directly from their API. We can even search for keywords and things like that. So that is an example of a type of scanner that could use some custom HTML, and you could just have it say, you know, scanning Twitter, whatever. So some really neat things that we can do here. I know I mentioned I kind of wanted this to be like a plugin system where you can load your own DLLs in here, but after looking at it some, depending on how the scans are done, that might not be the best solution. But since it is open source, if you were to develop a plugin, all you would have to do is add it in a pull request, and it would be one of the built-in classes, and it could be added very easily just with the pull request. And it would have access to all of the other core libraries that the application is using that I've developed. And I also have added a status, well, the most recent message. So what we're doing with the application is when it loads up, we actually have a file that contains log messages from the application. Now there's not very many log messages right now, but I'm trying to pull this up so I can show you just a moment. So this is our app data folder for this application, and you'll notice there's several different folders within here, and our logs are going to be stored here. And if we open up our logs, we get this from the other page here, you'll notice there's just a few things going on here. Here we can also pass in error messages, exceptions that are thrown by the application, warnings, and information, and also just debugging information as well. So if we wanted to debug something, we could just log it in debug mode or at the debug level, and we would only show it if we were using the debug mode in the application itself. So that's something that's actually really cool. And whatever the latest log status is, latest log message is, it'll show up down here. So if you just got an error when you did something, it'll show up down here, and those are actually color coded, and it would be red if it was an error. Now the info messages are teal, the warnings I think are orange, and the error messages are red. Yeah, I think that's all of them. There's only 4 built in, different levels. Now let's see. That has most of the stuff covered. Now I need to actually close the application itself, and I want to show you that we do have a version checker set up. So I have a hard-coded version value right now, and when we run the application, it's going to use this hard-coded value, and it's going to check it versus what is in GitHub. If the hard-coded value doesn't match the latest release version in GitHub, it's going to give us an update message, and you'll see that here in just a second. Ta-da! And when you hover over it, it makes it pretty clear that it's supposed to be a link. You can click on it, and it will take you to the latest release. So we're going to actually be publishing another release here, version 1.0.1 most likely. And from there, we'll double check our update process and make sure it works. So let's go ahead and close this. Let me see if there's anything else I might be missing. And I need to undo those changes. Although we will be going back and changing it to version 1.0.1, excuse me. Okay, so I added a project called Core Web Request, and this is what's going to allow us to do the unlimited multi-hook stuff. Essentially, when you get an alert, you can set it to where it will be able to send several webhooks as opposed to just the one that you would get with most alert services. We're going to have to come up with a settings form or class to create the code for this so that we can actually allow you to save multiple webhooks, or we're going to have to put it in how we actually parse the data out of the alert, and you would probably be able to define it however you want it that way. Alright, so everything's looking good. Need to take another look at the code. Now I did start working on the alert action plugin, but as I mentioned, I think this one is really gonna have to be something that is actually developed within the application. It can be based off of this interface that I created, but I doubt it's going to be a plugin just because it's going to rely on other libraries, and I don't know if that's really what needs to be done here, and I'm still kind of contemplating that. We'll see how things go when we actually get around to implementing some of this stuff, but we've got a lot of great stuff going on. I did also update the mapping for the memory map file. So where is that at? That is here. And essentially what was happening before, we were mapping the list of alerts that were coming in, but the issue with that was it only used the most recent one, so I had to make it to where it would actually add the list of alerts to the memory mapped file so that other applications could access all of the alerts that it's generating, and by default it's just going to add the alerts from the last hour within there. Now I've had some other ideas for alerts. I've been thinking about doing like a peer-to-peer alert system, which is, I don't know if anyone else is doing that, but essentially will allow people to enter onto this alert network, and once they join in, they will have access to all of the other alerts, and they can choose to perhaps subscribe to particular person's alerts. And this is going to be eerily similar to blockchain because we're not going to have a login system. I'm not going to code a web application just to make it to where we can log in and authorize. What's going to happen is we're most likely going to use some encryption methods to allow people to create their own unique public identifier. They'll have their own private key, and once these encrypt, they'll be able to prove that they own that particular alert, and that they are unique. So even if somebody has the same name, their public identity, the public cryptographic identity, is going to separate them from the others on the network. And that was an idea that just came to me today. Hopefully that'll actually work out, but that's a ways away. I've added it to our projects list. But for now, I think it's time to actually try to publish this thing and see if it'll actually work. So I need to go to our constants. I need to update our version. We're going to be running version 1.0.1 now. We go to our installer project. We also need to make sure that we update the installer project, the version on it, because if you do not do that, hold on, is it recommended the product code we changed? Yes, we want the product code changed. That way it'll know that it is an update. So you have to do this so that it will know that it's an actual update itself, plus so that the version checking will actually work when we go to run that when the application loads. So right now I'm going to clean the entire solution. That's going to get rid of all the temporary files and stuff, basically allowing it to start from scratch. We're going to rebuild it, and this is just building the files that it's going to use. It doesn't mean it's actually going to run the application right now. Okay, so we've got all of our files. Let's check the install. Well, actually, I like to do this just to make sure. And it did not update those. So I'm probably going to have to manually build that one. Alright, so, whoops. We will rebuild this one. I'll see if that updates anything. I also probably need to change this to release mode. Delete the local files. Switch this over to release. Save those changes and build. It's been a long time since I've done these setup projects, so I'm probably going to have a few issues. You can see it should be publishing here. And it should be making an MSI file. Setup file is just going, the setup.exe is going to run the setup.msi file. Ta-da, there we go. So now I will try to install this and make sure that it will actually update the installed version that I have. Okay, bring that over. It opened it up on my other monitor. I would like to see some progress. But once we install this, if everything works correctly, I'll pull it up, and if it's running completely fine, what's going to happen is we are going to add the release to GitHub, and then we can run locally and check the version checker again. So let me go back to my other monitor to bring this up. And you're not getting to see it come up because it's on the other screen. Just a moment. I didn't update correctly. So it's still showing this for some reason, and I have no idea why. It should not be using the old form anymore. This probably has something to do with the update method. I really do not enjoy these setup projects. They're not very fun. Okay, so there's actually two versions. It didn't get rid of the old version. I think that's actually a setting in the project itself. So I need to go and actually find this. Oh, there it is. It opened it up on that screen, although I did not like for it to do that. Okay, so I'm just going to uninstall the newest version that it installed. And we're just going to rebuild the setup project. Hopefully we can find the setting that we need to adjust it correctly. So I still have the 1.0.0 trade alert responder installed. Remove previous versions. I did not have that enabled. So let me come back over here and open up our release folder again. And I'm going to be deleting those, and we're going to rebuild. Then we'll run the installer again and see if it'll actually remove the old version this time. Oh, it's done. Well, yeah, it's done. Alright, just like last time, it brought it up on the other screen. I'll show you here. So hopefully it removed the old version this time, and we'll be using the new version. Loading the splash screen, and that's not good. It's still showing the old form. That is unfortunate. I probably shouldn't have changed the product code. That might have been the issue. Okay, so for this particular week, I'm going to have to just uninstall and reinstall the new package, and hopefully that'll work. Okay, it's got it removed now. Let's run the installer again. Alright, time to see if that helped at all. Yep. So that worked. And we are now using the newest version as it is installed on the computer. Now that we have our files, what's going to happen is I'm going to close this, and we are going to go to GitHub, and we are going to update the release. Now the tag version is what we're using for the version number itself, so that's going to have to be 1.0.1. And I probably need to go back and copy pretty much everything else from this. Oops. I'll just rename the title. And then we will take this and I will add a little note. I just need to add our files and we should be good to publish our release. Also make sure that it is marked as a pre-release. I love my fiber internet. That 84 megabyte upload took like 1 second or 2 seconds. Okay. I think we are good. I really only have the one branch, which is the master branch, so that's nothing to worry about right now. Do want to double check. Okay. That is accurate. Okay, so those are publicly available now. If you want to test the new version, there you go. All you gotta do is go to GitHub and look for the new release, and you'll have it. Now, the only other thing I really want to do with this is I would really like to double check that we are going to have our version checker working. So when I do this locally, it's going to be checking GitHub and it should be a version behind locally, even though it's the same code. Hey, there we go. That's what we expect to see. So now I need to close this, change it back, and confirm that it is actually matching the correct version. And since this was what was included when it was published, this is what you should see as well. And that happens sometimes with the debugger. There we go. It's not showing that anymore because we have updated our released version in our code. There we go. I'm kind of surprised there aren't more people on the stream today. Just the last couple times I've had these sort of spontaneous live streams, we've had a few people show up at least and join the chat. There didn't appear to be anyone today, which is kind of unfortunate. I was hoping some people would show up. Maybe it's just not a good time. Most of the views for my channel seem to come around this time of the day, but maybe people are too busy to actually interact or dedicate to a live stream that they can't actually just sit there and pause and consume at their own pace. Unless they come back later. And if they're just going to come back later, they probably don't want to watch it all at once now. So we've got that published. It's done. We need to commit our changes to GitHub, and then it will be completed. Sync it, which will actually send the stuff out to GitHub. So now our code should be updated in GitHub. I'd like to bring that up just to show you what you can kind of look for if you're curious. So when you see a project on GitHub and you want to see when something's been updated, it'll show you the latest commit up here. But you can also see what files were kind of impacted at a glance just by looking at this to see what time matches that. You can see the installer project was updated 23 seconds ago, and so was the core project. Now you can also click on commits, and you can see much more detailed information on what was actually changed. So let's click on this one about the log meshes. And it'll actually show you what changes were actually made to the code itself. So I moved the logs to the roaming app data folder instead of the local app data folder, so they would be with all the other folders in the application. I've added several files. When they're all green, that means you added them. Changed a few things, but you can see exactly what has changed on every single commit, which is basically just when the developer commits a change into the code base. So they've been working on the code, they think it's good enough to kind of save permanently, so they will add it in here. Now there are options, of course, with GitHub and the git method to kind of remove some of this stuff. A lot of people use branches to get around that, but since it's just me, I don't have to worry about that right now. Okay. Wow, we've got that done. And if you wanted to find the releases anyway, you can just come here on the GitHub page. I'm trying to think if there's anything else with this code that I was working with right now. I don't think so. Cool, I'm going to close it. Now we can actually look at TradingView, and I can share with you all some of the stuff that I'm kind of looking towards working on. So give me just a moment. Let me pull up my live stream chart. Whew. So this is pretty cool. This is a 1 second resolution, or 5 second, excuse me. I was working on 1 second. I must have checked the 5 second right before I got done. This is a 1 second resolution chart. And I was working on this because I had the idea to add custom intervals between your alerts in TradingView. So, for example, you can only have alerts up to every minute with the default settings in TradingView. But I think I found a way around that, which I'm pretty excited to share. I'm probably going to be doing a video about this soon, to where you can get alerts for pretty much anything very quickly. Let me pull up the script. It's actually loaded onto the chart. And that's all it is. What is going on is it is checking the current time, and then for a given period of time, and in this one it's 5 seconds, it's going to check every 5 seconds if your alert conditions are met, and it's going to fire an alert, and it's going to save the timestamp for this alert. Now, after that, on the very next candle, since this is a 1 second, it's not going to qualify for this, so it's not going to fire an alert. So it can't fire an alert unless it's on every 5th second. So this could be that, but I think we could improve this by making it any second after 5 seconds. But there's also another option that I've added, and that is the delay. So we added a 20-second delay between alerts. So if the last alert occurred 10 seconds ago, we would have to wait another 10 seconds for there to be an alert. Now, I don't really know why people would need to use this too much. Maybe you're doing some sort of high frequency. Hey, Gerald. But this was a requirement I've worked with on another application for someone who wanted to kind of trade quickly. Hey, let us trade. But yeah, this was a requirement on another application I worked on where the person wanted to have alerts only fire every so often, and they also wanted a delay between them. So I've actually coded this into C# before, and this is kind of me porting that over into PineScript, and I'll show you kind of how this one works. Give me just a second. Now we are on a 1 second chart, and this works best with a 1 second chart because it's going to allow you to process every bar. And let me show you what I mean using the script. So when you set your alert, you have 4 options. You can choose only once, which will only fire the alert once. You can choose once per bar close, so that will essentially be the same thing as once per bar. When you're on a 1 second chart, there's really not much time on these bars. So for our case, we'll consider these the same thing. But if you're looking at a 1 hour chart, this will only scan at the end of the hour on that chart, whereas once per bar would scan at any point within that candle or within that bar. By hold on, I'm gonna get to this, but on once per minute, what it does is it will scan at any point within the hourly candle, but it's only going to allow you to fire an alert every minute. So if for whatever reason you want alerts within 1 minute of each other, this will be able to do that because we are going to choose once per bar, and I suppose you could also choose once per bar close. We're going to be looking at a 1 second chart, and I'm just going to have it show a pop-up to show you how this actually works. And on the first time we hit an interval of 5 seconds on the clock, it's going to fire the alert. Then it's going to wait 20 seconds and it'll fire it again. If there's no bar, it won't fire it. So that's why I'm thinking of changing this to where it'll also look for anything after 5 seconds. So let's go ahead and hit create. Oh, and of course there's no bars. Here we go, come on. There we go. That one had a bar on the 5 second mark. So we should get another one. Yep. 2 more seconds. Oh, there wasn't a bar. Now? There must not have been a bar. Oh, wait. It is supposed to have a 20-second delay between them. So maybe the delay isn't working on the first one, but it should be working on all of those afterward. Yeah. So there was about a 20-second delay between that one. There's a little bit more work to do on this code, but it's coming along really well. So essentially, the way you would use this if you wanted to have alerts fire within 1 minute of each other on a, like, say, hourly, 4-hour, or daily chart, is you would load up this 1 second chart, and you would set the alert exactly like we did, and you would, in here, you would add your code to look at that particular chart for the indicators that you need, compare them, and then if your conditions are met based on the 4-hour chart, then you could set the alert to true and do this as well. And that will allow you to fire multiple alerts. But another reason I think this is actually useful is because even if you don't want it under 1 minute, even if you don't want your alerts to fire within under a minute of each other, this will also allow you the ability to customize the delay between your alerts. So even if, let's say, you're looking at the hourly chart and you've got 1 alert per minute selected, but you're thinking you don't want to receive alerts every minute, but after a certain period of time, maybe you would like to receive alerts every minute because you just received an alert. You don't want to receive another one for a while. So let's add a delay in. So we would set a delay using this script, and what would happen is your alert would fire, and then you could wait 2.5 minutes before you could actually fire another alert. So it's actually really cool. It's going to allow you custom intervals between your alerts in TradingView, and it's also going to allow you to tell it to scan every so often, or if I change the code to pretty much scan constantly every second after a certain period of time. And the way this is done is actually by using the time now value, and that's giving us a Unix timestamp of the current time. And this works on any resolution chart, but I recommend the 1 second chart if you are doing if you're doing this. I recommend the 1 second chart because it's going to give you the most bars, which will give you the most chances to fire the actual alert itself. It'll scan more often. So it's kind of like a weird hack. I'm not sure if anybody else is doing this stuff. I did a quick search for it. I didn't see anything. This is going to be pretty neat. I can't wait to share this one. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I've been up to. Well, I'll just delete that one. Well, they do have some other things that they've announced recently, such as using tuples, which is a pretty cool concept. It allows you to return a series of data types within one value. So it's kind of like an array, but it's predefined by the data types that you can return. So if you're a programmer, that might make sense. If you're not, that's probably gibberish. There'll probably be a video about that. It's kind of a neat way to condense your code. It's not necessary by any means. It might increase the performance and reduce compiling time of the actual code itself, because you'll probably be making less security calls or less calls in general. But for most people, there's really no need for it unless you're making something pretty advanced, because like I said, it's essentially an array that's predefined. Now, I think that's about all I have for indicators right now. I'm not really doing too much with that. I'm going back and forth between indicators and also the trade alert responder application, and it's just a lot. So if anyone has any suggestions, let me know. There was a couple about like doing something like the fancy Bollinger Bands and fancy triple moving averages, but doing that with like MACD. I'm thinking if I do something like that, it might end up being more like a fancy oscillator, and having it be multiple oscillators within one. I've got a few ideas on how to actually accomplish this. I know for a fact there are some like this out there, but of course mine are going to be different and unique, more features and things like that in there. It's just trying to actually fit as many of those in as possible, because they do, some of them are pretty different, but for the most part there's just a couple of lines, maybe 3 or 4 in each of them, and we'd have to find a good way to actually store that value and reshare it correctly. All right. Before I get to the TA, the giveaway link that's in the description of the video, that is, as of right now, only got the second question in it for the month of May. I'm going to be updating that to include another question from this particular stream, and hopefully if you've watched it, it'll help you gain a bunch of entries. Those are worth a bunch of entries, those questions, basically just to help the people who actually watch the channel get more entries for actually participating with everything here. Okay, so I really just want to look at TA now. I'm going to close this. I'll just bring over my tab from my other screen. Alright, so I've got the S&P on the right, and I've got Bitcoin on the left. And let's see. My logo is in the way a little bit. And the indicators are in the way. Now, when the price broke down here, I was really impressed that it bounced at that particular time. Although I figured it would. I figured there would have been enough momentum to try and close at the moving averages or even go below it, but there was not. And right now, momentum is pointing down on Bitcoin. Just about everything is pointing down. The stochastic RSI is already kind of low, so hopefully that means if there is a drop, it's not going to be long lasting and will bounce relatively soon. Although the stochastic RSI can stay low for very long periods of time. Just look back here. You know, it was pretty bearish after that. So as long as something like that doesn't happen, price could bounce relatively soon. And what I'm looking for now, let me remove these drawings. Now that scenario didn't play out, I'm thinking if we don't close back above the daily mid Bollinger Band, I'm thinking we're likely going to head back down to the bottom band, and at which point we would bounce up. And since June is right there, I'm thinking it could do something kind of like that. Pretty strong bounce up from there to finish the month of May out pretty strong. Let's go to the weekly chart. Whoops. So you can see on the weekly chart that this is going to be a pretty interesting weekly finish. Hopefully it doesn't close on the 50-week moving average, because that's essentially a bearish engulfing candle, and that would not be good. Although we would still be above the mid Bollinger Band, so that's still good. This is why I think we're probably going to have a decent finish to the week. But it's kind of hard to tell. But the bands themselves look really nice. Usually when they kind of angle up like this, it's pretty good. And I really like to think we're going to hit the upper band eventually. And who knows what's going to happen with that. But the monthly, well, hold on. Before I go to the monthly chart, let me pull up the other indicators here. Alright, so the weekly chart, it looks like it could cool down a bit if we don't finish this week really hard with a strong finish. So if it cools down a little bit, then we could see that little dip like I showed you, and hopefully just kind of resume from there. Now, a lot of my predictions and drawings that I make usually are fairly close to what's going to happen, but I'm usually a little too quick. My lines are a little too vertical. I like to anticipate things and get in a little too early on some of these ideas, but this could take several weeks to play out instead of just 1 or 2. But the end of the month is what's interesting me, mainly because of the monthly chart itself. I have to get rid of Bollinger Bands because of this. I'm hoping that we can at least close at or above this particular month's open. That would set us up for some more big gains, I believe. And the RSI, the MACD, the stochastic RSI, the MACD, the stochastic, all of this is really neutral right now. So if it does take off, it could point towards going up again and continuing to be bullish, which at these levels, if it were to turn bullish on a monthly time frame, would be pretty crazy. You could start thinking about all-time highs, in my opinion. But back to the other side of the chart here. I want to take a look at the S&P now, because everyone seems to think that it is well overdue for another correction. I've been watching the moving averages. I thought it would reject the 50-day moving average immediately. It kind of did. It got close and it rejected some, but it blasted straight through it. And right now, it's really trying to blast through the 100 and the 200. Best case scenario, if you think it's going to drop again, is you're hoping for a long squeeze up, and then a short squeeze, a short squeeze up, and then a pretty hard crash after that. There's no telling when it's actually going to hit the market, all of these huge, massive changes. I refuse to believe that this 400-point drop at the very beginning, the first week or so, was pricing in everything, because that only really takes you back to October of last year in terms of prices. And to think that with these many millions of jobs that we've lost, that just going back to last October is enough to say, yeah, we're better off now than we were last October. It's kind of hard to wrap your mind around, to think that you could actually be better off with your stocks and your equities than last October, considering all this stuff really happened starting around here in December sometime. I don't know. I just find it really hard to believe. It's kind of amazing. And of course they've been printing money, but that doesn't mean a whole lot. I mean, they've been printing money for a long time, and we've never seen anything like this. And even though people are going to go back to work, they are not all going to get their jobs back. And businesses have already lost a ton of money. Okay, so let's zoom back out on the weekly, the S&P. I believe I have it showing the daily lines on the weekly chart, so I'm not really sure. Yeah, so the 50-week is what I'm looking at. I mean, maybe all those daily lines are kind of getting ignored, and we're going to reject off the 50-week. I like to look for these kind of clusters of moving averages when they come together, because price kind of tends to go to where those are. You'll notice there was a cluster here that proved as support, because there were so many different support levels around that, it probably bounced off of it. And the same thing, I think, is probably going to go on here. We got this cluster of different moving averages. Now the yellow and red are on the daily time frame. The green is on the weekly. And let me actually reset that indicator so we can take a look at it. with all of the weekly values. Okay. So we blasted straight through 200 week and the 100 week on the way back up. If it's going to reject somewhere on a weekly chart, it's already past two of the positions you think it might. So if it doesn't reject at the 50, you better hope it's a short squeeze. Otherwise, who knows? You know, maybe it's right back up to where it was before. And it was looking decent last week for a potential red week this week. It just didn't come through. And now it looks like it wants to have some more momentum upwards, which is kind of hard to believe. I know I can't believe it. Let's take a look at the monthly chart here. And this one is also kind of similar to Bitcoin. Although you didn't have the engulfing bullish candle like you did on Bitcoin, you do have the second green candle. And it kind of leads you to believe that May's probably going to finish green. But it doesn't look as impressive as the Bitcoin chart. It just doesn't. And now it kind of depends on where we go from here. If it closes up around 3.1K, that's going to be very impressive, and it's going to be hard to slow that down. And I don't usually look at monthly charts. I am looking for opportunities to buy more stocks, though, when I get the chance. Just like I'm buying more crypto whenever I can. Which, by the way, yesterday's little dump was nice for my DCA, which was this morning. I caught it before it started pumping today, so that was really great. See, how long have I going on for? Oh my goodness. Have I really been going on for over an hour now? Yeah, wow. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we can really talk about right now. I mean, I could probably look at some other coins as well. I like to do that on the second side of the screen here. Oh, let's take a look at Ethereum. This is the daily chart. Wow, that's actually really impressive for Ethereum. That could end up being an engulfing candle today, which could be really bullish for it. And if that's the case, it could pull Bitcoin up with it. It's interesting. I'm glad I looked at the chart. Normally, looking at the Ethereum chart doesn't really give you too much when you're looking at Bitcoin too. Oh yeah. You can see that it is definitely outgaining Bitcoin versus the dollar in the ratio pair. And if that continues up, and it looks like it will for at least a little bit, that should bring Bitcoin up just a little bit with it. It looks like Ethereum's kind of leading right now, just because it's bouncing on its ratio. And that was a nice divergence, by the way. I wish I'd seen that. That is beautiful. That's like a clear bullish divergence on this chart. Oh man, I'm too busy working on these other coding projects to catch things like this. I don't look at enough charts. Now let's look at Litecoin. I was surprised to see this one still in the $40 range. It doesn't seem to have gained nearly as much back as a lot of the other stuff. And it doesn't look very impressive today either. Let's see what its ratio is like. So yeah, that one looks pretty good too. Another divergence on that one. Yeah, I can see it come back up to its 50-day average. Which means it's probably going to have to outgain Bitcoin versus the dollar, or just lose less versus the dollar percentage-wise than Bitcoin at the time. So it might be a little less volatile if Bitcoin is bearish. Let's take a look at Link. Yeah, that's just a really bullish chart. It's got a bullish engulfing candle today, momentum looking up on a lot of indicators, and including a recent MACD crossover. I bet its ratio is doing really well. Yeah, wow. Goodness, who knows? This thing probably going to go a bit more. If you're looking at the ratio chart, you're looking at resistance around 47,000 Satoshi. A nice big W. Wow. It's really nice. Link's chart's great. Let's take a look at basic attention token. This looks kind of similar to Litecoin, but it's not nearly as bad. I think it's ready for a bounce here soon, and if not, it's going to get ugly. Now versus Bitcoin, it's doing really well. It seems like a lot of alts are doing really well. That might be a sign of things to come. If there's a lot of them doing that, then maybe we're looking at a mini alt season. Because I definitely think that was the bottom, at least for a while. That's a huge pump, huge reaction from the price going that low, and I wish I had been able to buy some when it did that. I just wasn't able to, unfortunately. So if there's anything else I want to look at. I did Ethereum, Litecoin, Link. Let's look at Ripple. 20 cents. It went all the way down to 12 or so. Wow. And let me guess, it's bounced huge versus Bitcoin as well. Yeah. It too had a divergence. And looks pretty good for now. Yeah, wow, these alts look really good. I can see why people are saying to go into alts right now. I wouldn't say that, but I can see why other people are. I'm already well into several, and I DCA pretty often, so I'm fine. But yeah, alright. I've been streaming probably a little longer than I anticipated. Hopefully those of you all who actually watched the video were able to enjoy it, and the trade alert responder application was published at the first part of the video. So if you want that, you can go get it. You're gonna have to uninstall the first version. Then you can have the newest version installed, and I'll have to figure out why it wouldn't update, but that should be easy enough to figure out. And let's see, we talked about some potential indicators coming up, some other videos that I'm going to talk about. And then also, we talked about some TA and the giveaway. So for those of you who managed to make it all the way to the end of the stream, I really appreciate you doing that. It's been a good time for me to talk through some of this stuff. Hopefully you all managed to get something from this as well. Hopefully you enjoy the trade alert responder application I'm working on, and some of the other indicators and code that we're working on here. But I think I'm actually done now. Thanks everyone. Have a great day.